Welcome to the Daily Commercial Forum. I am your host, Sandy Moore. Encounters between people and coyotes are occurring more often. As coyotes become used to people, they may lose their fear of humans and become a problem for people, pets, and livestock. Today we are talking about where coyotes have been seen in Lake County and what you should do to protect yourself if you see a coyote. Our guests from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission are Joy Hill, the Public Information Director from the Northeast region, and Susan Carroll Douglas, Wildlife Assistant Biologist. We also have Gary Hodge, who is an Animal Control Officer with Lake County Animal Control. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, talking about coyotes. In Lake County, how common is it for people to see coyotes?
It's actually not uncommon at all. We have coyotes documented in all of the counties here in Florida, and it's getting more and more common for them to be seen in and around even residential communities nowadays. They're very adaptive, and so they're moving around.
Well, tell me a little bit about, their habitat. What is it that they, where do they live? What are they? Well, you said you can see them in these residential communities, but I don't know where they hide out, I guess.
Right.
So where is it that they're living?
They're actually really adaptive. There's not one specific habitat type that they have to have. It's a matter of if there's space and if there's food, they'll use those areas. So you can find them in all different types of habitats. And unfortunately, you can find them roaming communities as well if they find food sources, small rodents, animals, things like that. So they're pretty non-specific as far as a specific habitat that they need.
Well, when I always think about the movies and the coyotes that are up on the cliff and they're howling, you don't really hear about that. I mean, do they still, do they work together in packs? I mean, or are they pretty much just alone, or how is that?
Well,
Go ahead.
Okay. I've actually heard them at my house howling, and it sounds like there's about 1 million of them. There's probably only a couple, but. And I will say it was really kind of neat to hear them howling, because it reminded you of what you're talking about. But at the same time, it gave me a very eerie feeling. It was at night and this very musical, eerie thing. But primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but primarily they're solitary until they have their young, and they're teaching their young to go out and hunt on their own and forage on their own, and then they probably work as family groups somewhat.
Yeah, typically. I mean, they're going to be traveling together as a pair sometimes, and then their offspring, they care for their offspring for up to 8 or 9 months, I think, generally, and so then you'll have that family unit. And in some cases, we've gotten reports of small groups, which are probably extended family units, say 2 different litters, maybe from consecutive years or something, kind of hanging out in the same area, but.
So not necessarily like a big pack of coyotes.
Right, at least not thus far here in Florida, thankfully. We don't get huge packs.
And our experiences, a couple of experiences we've had, it's usually been a single, never more than 2, and it's normally, they're hunting. But of course, with ours, we find them more prominently in the rural country areas, but they are moving inwards into your urban areas, especially the Clermont area and stuff like that, where they're really populating. They're starting to build a lot of homes.
Now, do they have like a little place where they kind of always go back to as home? I mean, do they go to a certain area? Is it easy to find where they've been, living, or?
I know this, that they will, here in Florida and probably in other places as well, they'll make their dens in some other animal's hole, maybe expanded, or make it in under logs or things like that. And they may or may not go back to use those dens again after they've had their litters.
Right.
But I don't know that I know as far as they go back to a certain place each time.
No, I don't really know for
They just
sure on
roam?
that either, but they cover a good amount of space. It's, I think I read it's 5 or 10 miles, square miles, that they would consider part of their territory or their roaming space. So they may have potentially a different den site each year in there. I don't know as they're tied to that den site for repeated years, but
I think it's tied to food. If there's a food source,
Yeah.
that's where they're going to keep returning to or coming, from. And once the food, because this is what we try to tell people, if they have coyotes, they notice their outdoor cats or something might start missing. if there's nothing there for the coyotes, they'll move on, but they will certainly clean out anything that's there and that's easy to get. Once it's gone, though, there's no reason, and they'll move on.
I believe that's why we're getting so many calls as far as domestic animals, because we are now encroaching on their territory. So, and domestic animals are easy prey for them, because to a cat, they're just a big dog or a medium-sized dog. And since they are a prey animal, our domestic animals are very easy for them to get a hold of. And we get several calls with dogs that are being attacked off leashes and stuff. And normally it refers back to it's a wild animal, which it usually is a coyote in this case.
What would be the biggest problem with the coyotes? Is it the, going after the domestic animals, or do they carry rabies?
They do. They can carry rabies. I've been 6 years and we've never had a coyote attack on a human that was come back with rabies. But they're like a fox or any of the other animals. They can carry rabies because they eat a lot of the animals. They prey on a lot of the animals that are rabies susceptible. They eat raccoons, which raccoons can be born with the virus. So there are very high chances of them having rabies, but we've been fortunate so far not to have any encounters that I know of that we have tested that have come back positive.
So now, have you had issues with them having encounters with humans, as far as attacking humans?
We've never had an attack
No.
that I'm aware of on a human in Florida, but that is yet. I'll say it like that. That's yet, because they are becoming much more widespread throughout the whole state. As Gary mentioned, we are building more and more into the areas where coyotes have been living. Coyotes have been here for a long time. They're not new to Florida, but with their expansion and they're able to find these easy food sources, we're just seeing more and more of them into these areas.
Well, and you say easy food sources. If they're out in the wild, I would think that they would find the rodents and the raccoons and the possums or whatever out there.
Mm-hmm.
So is it easier? What exactly do you mean? Are you talking about the cats and
The cats that go
Well, yeah,
explode.
because-
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
in some cases, yes. It's.
I'm sorry if you're a cat person.
Yeah,
No,
it's sometimes
it's sad.
livestock. A lot of people have chickens. They will go
okay.
after those. They're opportunists. They are predators, but they're also opportunists. So if they see a potentially easy meal, they're going to take advantage. Another reason that I think a lot of times they come into communities is because a lot of people have bird feeders, which are going to draw in the squirrels, the birds, the other things that they may find as easy food sources if they're just sitting on the ground eating your bird seed. So it's not necessarily that you're intentionally attracting them or anything else, but they're smart enough to pick up on where there's concentrations of food sources.
And what we have people that feed feral cats, and they leave food outside. And anytime you leave food outside, well then, it's just an easy meal for them. And then what happens is that draws the animals up, and then now your domestic animal, which a lot of people let their cats run loose in their yards, and they don't realize the coyotes are there. And then they let their dogs out and stuff like that. And
Well, I've never seen, I have rarely seen a cat get really attacked by, get caught by a dog. They seem to be able to get away from dogs pretty easily. So what is it about coyotes that it makes it so much harder, or it makes them so much easier of a prey?
Well, for one thing, coyotes are wild animals, and they are predators. I think a lot of our domestic dogs, a lot of that predator, instinct has, it's still there. They're still predators, but it's really, they have a bowl of food every day. They're not worrying about having to find something. But a coyote, in order for them to survive, they have to catch their food, unless there's the nice cat food bowl or dog food laying out there, which again, we don't want that. But and the natural prey for them, the small rodents and the rabbits and the squirrels and things like that, those are prey items, and they know how to protect themselves so that they don't become the next meal. But cats and little dogs, they don't know how, they're not afraid of anything. They have their food, they get petted.
Yeah, they probably actually would go up and a dog would go up and sniff it, like, oh, what's up? Can we be friends?
Exactly.
And most cats, they think it's just a medium-sized dog. And if you've watched most dogs that come up on the cat sometimes will stand its ground not knowing any difference. But
Right.
these are prey animals, and they know how to attack, they know how to kill, and a lot of people are losing cats due to that reason because they
Well, how
don't.
big do coyotes get?
You know, we've had generally they're 20 to 35 pounds. Okay.
So they're not really that big.
Well, however, we've spoken to some trappers,
However.
you know, who do some trapping for ranchers and things. That, you know, when you're talking about it, it's horrible to lose a pet. And like I talked to you earlier, if something came to take my little dog, they would see the she-devil herself out there going, trying to prevent this. But, you know, farmers and ranchers and things are losing income when these things are out there. And so there are those who professionally trap coyotes out in those areas, and they have trapped coyotes up to 60 pounds.
Oh, wow.
I just to say, I've seen one about a year ago, and he was good size. He was a little bit bigger than a medium-sized dog.
Now, is it illegal to trap the coyotes? I mean, if you know, what if you have a problem with them? I mean, are there people out there that are looking for them? Do they hunt them? What's the...
Kind of all of the above.
Right.
You can hunt them. There's no close season, so you can take them year-round.
On private land.
On private land, yes. All you need is landowner permission. For folks that want to hire a trapper, there are trappers that are willing to go out there and try and catch coyotes, but they're not easy to trap.
No. And I'm guessing they're not easy to hunt either, you know, if you're...
There's some know-how. Yeah, you want to deal with somebody that has experience if you're trying to take
Well, and I know
coyotes.
you mentioned that earlier. If somebody has a nuisance coyote, they tell them what you were telling me before they started.
Well, you know, when people have problems with wild animals, they call the Fish and Wildlife Commission and they want us to do something. And what they really mean is they want us to come out and catch this animal and get it out of there. And we don't have a policy or protocol for going out and catching coyotes. So we recommend different things that people can do to discourage the coyotes and protect themselves and their livestock. But if they want to try to get the coyote removed, they should call a professional wildlife trapper. But be sure when you do that you're calling somebody who has experience successfully catching coyotes, because they are difficult. And ask those questions, because otherwise you will be wasting your money. Coyotes are really not captured in have-a-heart traps. There are other, and Susan can talk a little bit about what it requires. There are permits that we require people to have if they're going to catch coyotes in a certain way.
Right. A lot of times, because they're wary of cage traps, people end up trying alternative methods, and a lot of times that's just simply taking them out when they're seen on the property. But some trappers will use leg hold traps, and there is a permit required to be able to use those traps. So it's used mostly on those ranch properties and locations where you don't have a lot of animals and people running around, because certainly we don't want to catch anyone in one of those.
And that's one of those traps that, you know, they step in it and
I know,
grab
and it seems kind of cruel.
Well, there's different ones now, right?
They do have to, here in Florida, they're required to use what's called a padded leg hold trap, which is intended to be less severe and less breaks and damage to the animal. It's a trap, so there is some risk of damage to the animal, but we at least try and make it as humane as we can when capturing them.
Now, and you mentioned, and I've got other things I want to get back to too, but you had mentioned some things that you can do though to prevent that, or just to, if you see a coyote, what are the things that you can do to protect your, livestock, your little dog and Muffin and little kitty and
Susan deals with this all day long.
Yeah, most of it is just being alert and being cautious. Unfortunately, I usually recommend people, if you love your pets, keep them inside, because there are predators here in Florida. We have a number of different predators that will take advantage of easy prey. And because, like Joy said, most of our cats and dogs, they don't have the instinct to run from an unusual animal that's approaching them. So it always is best to keep domestic animals inside as much as possible. At the very least, take them in at night, because most of these predators are going to be active from dusk to dawn.
And that was my question. When is the most active?
It is. And so you want to, at the very least, take them in at night.
Now, what about your, people that have farm animals, the chickens,
What we do is we advise them to put their animals in stalls. Especially if they've got a cow that's fixing to have a calf or whatever, is to put them in stalls. You don't want them out in the pasture, because the animals then are very susceptible. And it's back to where she was talking about the dogs and cats, same things. It's just when you go outside, be very aware of your surroundings. You know, a lot of people just open the door and they just let their dog out, or they just start walking right away. Well, if there's a coyote in the area and he's preying and he knows your dog's there, he's just lying in wait. And a lot of times, you know, they'll attack and people turn their leashes loose, and then the dog, you know, they've got the dog then, or the cat. So the main thing is just being aware of your surroundings, put up fences. They can jump, but going to be less likely.
Well, there's certain kinds of fences, actually. I was doing a little research online last night, that you can put up, you know, a certain height. They have roller bars that, you know, the coyotes jump up there and this bar rolls and they fall off so they can't get over it. And there are other methods. You need to put something on the bottom so they can't dig under them. But so there are methods like that. But one of the things that we really try to get people to do is work together as communities, because one of the most important things is for people to know the coyotes are out there to begin with. If they don't know, like Gary said, they open the door and let them out. So in an instance that we had recently, the news media helps us a lot with this because they end up hearing about these things. We had, unfortunately, somebody opened their door and was walking out with their 2 small dogs, and there was a family group of coyotes sitting there, and actually, unfortunately, got one of the it was a little dog, a Chihuahua mix. Now,
were they on a leash, or was he just kind of letting them?
The report we got that they were not on a leash.
Okay, I'm just curious.
But he was with them.
Right.
And before he got to the end of the walkway, the coyotes were right there, almost like Gary said, they were waiting. They probably were aware that these little dogs were there. Maybe they have a routine. But what's important is for people to let the other people in their community know, hey, you know, way before some sort of incident like that occurs. I've been seeing coyotes out here, and then what they need to do to try to make sure that their little pets or even little children. You know, if we certainly recommend, don't let your little toddler out by themselves. Most people don't anyway, but you know, don't.
That's probably a good
That's
information
just
to have
good in
regardless.
Well, a lot of times they'll let their young kids walk their animals, and that's where a lot of dog attacks all come in, because people get bit and that's what scares me more about little kids walking. If there is coyotes, they go to attack their dog. What's that little child going to do?
Right.
Yeah, but what we recommend, and what this is, you know, a lot of this information is coming from places that have had to deal with coyotes and human conflict for a long time. But when you, if you're out walking your little child and you do see coyotes, pick your child up immediately, or your little pet, and make yourself big, and that way, the coyote who may have been focusing on that little child or that little pet all of a sudden sees this potential threat, and then yell and carry on and try to, you know, scare them away. But they are very fast, and you need to just be aware when they're out there. So again, tell neighbors, pass it around. There's coyotes here. Here's what we need to do, and that's the best way to get the information out.
Well, how often do coyotes reproduce, and how many do they have typically in a litter? Do we know that information?
It varies. Typically, they say, I think it's around 4 to 6 that are in a litter. I think they've recorded up to 12 in some cases, but hopefully that's very rare.
Yeah.
But they only generally have litters once a year in the springtime. So you're at least dealing with that cycle just once a year usually, and then they're going to be, you know, training those young, and late summer is when they're training those young to be predators, to find their own prey. And so that may sometimes lead to increased interactions because they're moving around as a family unit trying to teach their young how to survive.
So and I know we talked a little bit about some of this stuff, but what exactly, we've heard a lot of the negatives. What are some of the benefits? I mean, what's great about having coyotes?
They're good rodent control.
Right.
You know, years and years ago, there is evidence that coyotes actually existed thousands and thousands of years ago in Florida. You know, because you'll hear a lot of people say, well, they got here because they were brought in illegally trucked in. I think people who like to hunt with dogs would bring them in to chase them and that kind of thing. And that is true. That did happen. But they are also expanding back, migrating back from other ranges. So they're here both naturally and that way. But they don't really have any natural predators right now around here. If we had a fairly good panther population or something, they might have a few more predators. But
That
really,
sounds scary too. I'm not sure.
yeah, it's all.
I don't know that I really want a panther around my house either, with my small child or small animals.
Well, that's another whole topic.
Yeah.
but they are good. They are good control for those animals. Nature has its own way of controlling things, and I don't know this for a fact, but probably one of the reasons coyotes didn't exist here until fairly recently, probably 40 years ago or something.
Yeah, like I said, my little research, it was the 70s when they first appeared, or
Came back.
first came back, and then they've just steadily populated the area.
But prior, we had a red wolf population here in Florida, that's been extirpated for years. And the red wolves probably eliminated the coyotes. So, the coyotes may be filling that ecological niche somewhat to take care of some of these other kinds of things. But again, these easy prey, this unsuspecting domestic animal, or these relatively easy chickens and things like that are just.
Now, how do you tell them apart from? Because I don't know that I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a coyote in the wild. I think I've seen them at a park, or something like that. But how would you tell them apart from like a wolf or a fox, even a medium-sized dog? Is there?
It's not always easy. Their size is helpful to distinguish sometimes between them, and fox are going to be much smaller than they are. But distinguishing them between some species of dogs and a coyote is not always easy. They're going to have generally this typical kind of mixed brown colored coat, and generally a kind of fluffy tail, pointed ears. But so do a lot of dogs too.
Yeah.
So
I know. I was looking at the picture on the front of this. I don't know if that can. I don't know where's the best place to pull that, but I was looking at that picture and I was thinking that that really could easily be mistaken for somebody's pet, even.
Well, one thing they carry their tails. It's a shorter tail than a wolf, and they carry it when they travel down like that. Dogs are wagging their tails and carry them gaily up in the air. They also have a distinctive look, but if you haven't seen one, it's hard to just tell. They have a very narrow face and very pointy ears. That could be somebody's dog, but there's some differences there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
Well,
the facial features of this are a lot different than just about any dog. Usually a dog that has those type of facial features is a lot smaller. And like she said, the tail, most dogs have their tails either straight out or up or wagging it. And for its size, it looks more like a fox than it does anything to me.
Yeah, and especially if it's
yeah.
a little bit, like as a younger coyote, I would think that would be easy
But
to
the color of the
mistake.
pelt looks like a German Shepherd.
And it makes a very
Right.
handsome
Sure.
throw rug.
And this one has a nicer coat. This may actually be more of a northern coyote because it's thicker and it's actually a pretty nice coat. But I don't know if you can get the little pup there, but
Oh, he's very cute.
yeah.
He looks a lot like Todd on
extremely cute.
Fox and the
Disney
Hound.
movie, yes.
Yeah. He might be
Yes.
cute, but I guess he's kind of scary too.
So yeah, but coyotes have been known to breed with domestic dogs, and we actually have somebody who we work with, and her dog appears to be part coyote and part maybe Australian Shepherd. But when you look at its face, it is very distinctive.
Now, if you were to get like a coyote puppy and raise it like a dog, would it still go to its natural wild? I mean, it's not the same.
Most likely. It's not a domesticated animal. So it's not like it's been bred for hundreds of years to live with humans.
Okay.
So
Now, if somebody has a question, maybe they're having problems, they've seen coyotes, and they want more information, where would be a good place to send them?
All right. They can call the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, our Ocala office, 352-732-1225. Also, we're really wanting to encourage people to use our website because we have a lot of information on there and links, and that is myfwc.com. The University of Florida has a lot of information about coyotes. In fact, they have done, probably Dr. Martin Main has probably done more research on coyotes.
Is that where you
than
did your
anyone.
research for?
I did some of my research with Dr. Main. Yeah, so he's done a lot of research on them. So that's what I would recommend.
And what is there any resources for the county that you know of that if they have a question? Or?
No, not usually. Usually we refer them to the Fish and Game.
You're going to say, oh, go to this website or call this number.
But, you know, we, like, if they're sick or injured, we'll come out and usually try and, you know, capture them or trap them if we're able to. But if they're well and all, we don't have the resources to do it, and so we're not really trained as far as trappers to go out and trap them. So we do refer a lot of them to the Fish and Game.
Well, and it sounds to me like a lot of what we've been talking about is, you know, we've done a lot of different shows on, you know, alligators, but we've done it on bears and all of these nuisance animals, and a lot of those same things kind of hold true to not feeding, you know, not putting food out for the other animals and all of those things. So I think it's important just in general to look at some of those ways. If you're worried about these types of animals, to go on this website and look at ways that you can prevent that.
yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of our message is the same for a bunch of different species. Just, you know, try and take precautions and not provide easy food sources.
As
for
much
these
as we
animals.
like to have the bird feeders out there,
Yes.
let's stop feeding the squirrels and the birds.
It's tough.
They're gonna
Everybody
find it.
comes down here because they like the atmosphere, they like the wildlife, but sometimes it gets rather close.
That's right.
And I think they don't realize some of the wildlife we have, you know,
Right.
and they come from places where there's not year-round wildlife. In the wintertime, a lot of those places, birds fly down here, other animals go into hibernation here, year-round, we've got wildlife.
Well, thank you very much for your time and being here and sharing about coyotes.
Thank you.
Thank you.